Hey horror fans, so this weekend kicks off Universal Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights, and I could not be more excited. It is my favorite event to go to every single year. I go multiple nights. It's just a fun atmosphere. You got the spoopy, you got the spooky. It's just a lot of fun to be had all around. I have been going since 2017, so this will be my 6th full year going to the event because we're not going to count that, 1 year that we've all collectively agreed to forget about. Right? So with that being said, I figured let's count down my top 6 favorite houses of all time, because everyone does top 5, and this will be my 6th full year. It makes sense to me. So without further ado, my number 6 is Slaughter Cinema from HHN 28. I really love campy, dumb, fun horror, as well as like the well-known prestigious, like Halloween is my favorite. But I also love the campy, dumb, like chopping mall type movies as well. And that is exactly what Slaughter Cinema is. Slaughter Cinema is very much just like a celebration of horror as a whole. So basically, the creative team made up a whole bunch of B movies that don't actually exist and slapped them all into one house together. So you got like Cult of the Beast Baby, or Sorority Sacrifice, or I forget what the actual movie was called, but it was basically a Swamp Yeti, or like a Critters knockoff, or a Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff, all in one house. And it was so much fun. If you didn't like one room, that's fine. You're probably gonna like the next room, and you just hop on from story to story. I typically like one cohesive narrative going through a house, but I think the narrative for this house was that they're all campy B-movie horror, so there wasn't an overarching narrative, but the individual ones were a lot of fun. It was a grab bag of just wacky fun with some good scares every once in a while, but it was Horror Nights creativity at its best. At number 5, I have Wicked Growth from HHN 31. Now, I'm a little partial to this one because anytime I have fond memories associated with a house, it's going to be higher on my list. 1, this is a great house, but 2, I got to go through it with my buddy Josh when he was here for his one and only Horror Nights so far. I'm calling you out, Josh. You need to come back for Horror Nights. But he and I both really, really enjoyed it, so we got express passes, and I told him, no, we need to book to the back of the park, Wicked Growth first, that way we can double back around and do it later in the night, so you get multiple runs of this. He loved it. I love it. Wicked Growth is just one of those fun ones because it is like if Spirit Halloween was a haunted house, basically, of just your traditional, here's pumpkins, here's goblins, here's witches, here's just Halloween iconography with some really good scares and a really good cohesive narrative. Slaughter Cinema was a bunch of things bagged together to make one fun house. Wicked Growth has a really good, compelling story. I like the original houses more so than the intellectual property houses, which I still really enjoy, but if you can come up with a clever idea and a clever story that I can follow along from scratch, I'm gonna really dig it. Wicked Growth is definitely one of the all-time greatest houses of all time. It's beloved by the community, and I will not disagree whatsoever. I really, really like Wicked Growth. I just think there's 4 houses that are slightly better. At number 4, we have Scarecrow the Reaping from HHN 27. Now, I gotta be honest here. A lot of people have Scarecrow the Reaping as one of their favorite or best houses of all time because it's one of the best told stories, or it was one of the scariest houses they've ever been into. The set design was fantastic. I think this is at my number 4 spot, basically just because it was my first house I ever did at Horror Nights. So I was working there at the time, and whenever I would ask guests, I was just like, okay, so how many houses have you done? Which ones did you like the best? I was always curious, if I did a house, which one should I do? And resoundingly, people said Scarecrow. So one day before my shift, or one of my off days, one of the two, I did Scarecrow the Reaping, having not been in a haunted house in close to 7 or 8 years maybe, and I'd never done a Horror Nights house, so I had no idea what to expect, and I absolutely loved it. But at the same time, when I came out of him going, so that's what my heartbeat feels like, I am absolutely terrified, and I love it. It was such a fun experience. It really got me hooked more than anything else. I'm glad I did that first as opposed to the other house that I did that year, which was the Horrors of Blumhouse. Not a good time, so I got to see the highs and the lows that HHN provides. But Scarecrow the Reaping, just great set design, absolutely terrifying. It was just a great time to be had, and really, without me knowing, I dived headfirst into the Horror Nights world, and I have not looked back since. At number 3, we have the most recent addition to this list. We have Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake from HHN 31, last year's event. I did not know what to expect with this house going into it when they first announced it. They're just like, it's a sequel to the Scare Zone that, you know, I never went to because I started going at 27. So I didn't really know what to expect. And some people were like, it's like a ghost town New England village. And I'm going, say what? I'm immediately on board with that. That sounds like a beautiful aesthetic. And then you walk into the house and it's this gorgeous, snowy, rundown, decrepit, abandoned fishing town. And I didn't think that that would be my vibe or my aesthetic, but boy, was it my vibe, my aesthetic that year. This house is gorgeous. It is not as terrifying as some other houses I've been to, specifically Scarecrow, but it easily takes the record for like the most beautiful house. It was stunning to look at. The gigantic boat that they had. It felt like I was actually walking through a claustrophobic village. There are times that I didn't feel like I was actually in a giant building. I felt outdoors, and then you kind of look up and see the lights, and it kind of ruins it for you. But Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake got a lot of love from the community, and I completely understand why. There's people that I knew that had never been to Horror Nights before, and I made sure that that was the first house that they went to, because I knew they don't love to be scared, but they love the artistry that goes into stuff like that, and the beautiful work that was done at Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake is one of the most unrivaled houses I've ever been to in terms of an aesthetic standpoint. Not the scariest, there were some good scares. It leans more on the spoopy than the spooky, but that's totally fine with me, and I would love a sequel to that house as soon as humanly possible. At number 2, we have Graveyard Games from HHN 29, also known as, to me, the single best original narrative ever created for a Horror Nights house. I think the original story that they came up with for this house was just brilliant, and the more I went through the house, the more I picked up on the narrative, because I didn't get everything all at once, but the more I did it, and I did this house a lot, I got more of the intricacies of the story, and I thought it was so brilliantly done. So basically, you have two kids that are spray painting a graveyard and just having a good time like teenagers do, and the spirits are kind of getting restless and annoyed. They're just like, okay, guys, leave us alone. And so eventually the teens unsettle too many spirits, and it doesn't go well. But it's the creepy classic graveyard setting, creepy classic graveyard everything, and it just really, really works. Also having some fantastic scares and fantastic effects. There's like a vanishing mirror effect at one point that I really, really like, with like candles going on forever, but you don't see yourself, and it was really, really well done. There's a pitch black room that scared the crap out of everyone. I was always curious to go through that because it has this brilliant like audio, surround audio that freaked everybody out, and I love good audio in houses, and that was it. But like I said, fantastic original story to the point of I would not mind at all if we got a movie version of Graveyard Games, because I think the story and the narrative that they built within the house was so clever and creative. It wasn't just we pop out of locations. It was, we're going to put an actual in-depth, interesting story to get you invested in this house that demands repeat walkthroughs. And I walked through it a lot, but it wasn't my most viewed house from HHN 29. It's not even my favorite. That honor goes to its next door neighbor, my number one, the Universal Monsters from HHN 29. Holy crap. I highly doubt there will ever be a house that I go through more than this one, and I highly doubt that there will be a house that I love more than this one. So, Horror Nights houses are special for a variety of different reasons. You got stuff like Scarecrow, where it's the scariest. It has some great set design, like Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake, or they've got good story, like Graveyard Games, or they could be a fun grab bag, like I said with Slaughter Cinema. Or you could somehow have all of that into one house, and that's what HHN 29's Universal Monsters was to me. I gotta be honest, Universal Monsters, I absolutely love them. I love horror, but I also really love history, and I think it's fascinating to watch the old school Universal Monster movies as history and see kind of the foundation being laid for modern horror, of like everything kind of trickles back to them, and even before that, their narrative and their like literary origins, I think, is fascinating. But I like the Universal Monsters, so when I saw that they were being announced for HHN 29, I was going, Cool. I did not know that they would deliver as hard as they did just right from the get-go when you're in the graveyard with all the headstones and statues of the creatures that you'll see, except for the Invisible Man. I'm still not over that, but hey, we finally get him this year. He's the only thing missing from that house. That's the only thing that keeps it from utter perfection. It's like 98% perfection. But the fact that besides the Invisible Man, you get basically everybody else. You get the Wolfman, you get Hunchback, you get Creature from the Black Lagoon, you get some great stuff with Dracula and his brides, Frankenstein. It was just a grab bag of everything that I really, really love in horror. You had some good scares, you had beautiful set design. It just felt like classic Halloween spooky time. Not to scare the crap out of you, but to just have fun with the experience. But there were still some good scares to be had. I went through this house any chance I possibly could have because it was so perfect. I loved it so, so much. The only thing slightly better than that, maybe at that event that year, was Marathon of Mayhem, the Lagoon show. Oh, that'll never be topped, that first Lagoon show. I absolutely loved it. I also had some fantastic character interactions that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I got some of the best interactions from that house in particular, more than any other house, so that puts it pretty high on my list. Maybe this will finally be usurped this year, but I don't know. I went to that last one a lot, and I loved every single minute of it. But what do you guys think? What are your all-time favorite HHN houses? Let me know down in the comments below. Am I way off compared to your list? Are we kind of similar in interest? What are you most excited for this year's Horror Nights? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you like what you see and you want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, horror fans.